John here from Great Lakes Country. Recently, a company called Bighorn reached out and asked if they could send me one of their outdoor pizza ovens. As it happens, I've been considering getting one of these things anyway, so I said sure. As I always do with this sort of thing, I told them I'd make a 100% honest video review of the product, so that's exactly what I'm doing. I'll be going through the full process of setting it up, getting it started, and doing a couple test cooks with it. And of course, I'll share all of my insights and opinions about the entire thing. And while I'm getting this thing all unboxed and set up, I'll mention that this sort of dome-style, consumer-grade outdoor pizza oven has become very popular over the past few years. There's a bunch of brands that make them, and they come in a variety of fuel sources. Propane gas and electric are probably the most common, but what very much intrigued me about this Bighorn pizza oven is that it's powered by wood pellets. Yes, the exact same kind of pellets that a pellet grill uses. Bighorn does sell gas ovens, electric ovens, and even combo ovens that use pellets and gas or pellets and electricity. But this oven right here is the Bighorn pellet-only pizza oven, and I'm kinda psyched to try this thing out. This pellet oven also comes in a 12-inch version, but I've got the bigger 16-inch version. Assembly is very easy. First, I just need to fold out the legs underneath. Then unscrew 4 screws to remove this little storage plate and drop in the pellet hopper and secure it in place with those same 4 screws. Next, just set this little pellet tray into the firebox and slide that whole thing into the back of the oven. Then install the chimney by just setting it in place and turning it slightly, and then set the little chimney cap on top. Finally, attach the oven door handle to the oven door with 2 screws. Set the pizza stone in place inside the oven, and that's it. That all took me about 5 minutes. Now this baby is ready to fire up. So I'll pull that little firebox back out of the oven, and I need to fill up this little tray with pellets. It doesn't hold a ton of pellets, but this step is mainly about getting it fired up, and we'll be adding more pellets into the hopper in a couple minutes. Now, unlike a pellet smoker, you have to manually light these pellets. So using a couple natural bird's nest style fire starters and my trusty blowtorch, I'll get them burning. Then the firebox is going back into its slot in the oven, and I'll mention there is this little damper on the back of that firebox, and I'll make sure that it's wide open for now to get as much airflow as possible to get those pellets burning nicely. Pretty quickly, I can see lots of smoke starting to seep out of that pellet hopper door as well as the chimney. I was honestly a little confused at first about how this little pile of burning pellets at the back of the oven would translate to a flame across the top of the oven, such that you'd expect from a pizza oven. But sure enough, that is quite a substantial flame licking across the oven's ceiling. The engineering to shape that flame in that exact way is honestly pretty impressive to me. The shape and angle of the metal, along with the chimney placement, create just the perfect draw to pull the flames and make for what is practically the perfect flame broiler. Anyway, once those initial pellets are burning nicely, let's fill that hopper with some more pellets. The oven came with this little pellet scoop, and honestly, this little thing is kinda silly. It does the job, but I need like 8 scoops to fill that hopper, and it's sort of awkward to hold. But oh well. Now, this initial cook isn't really a cook at all. Rather, this is meant to sort of season the oven and burn off any factory oils that we don't really want on there when we start cooking food. So I'm loading that pellet hopper up to the top and keeping the flame going full blast. I also want to see how hot this oven can get and how long the full hopper of pellets will last. Once this thing has reached its peak flame production, I can actually see some flames dancing out of the top of the chimney, which is a little crazy to me, but doesn't seem like it's any sort of a problem. Let's talk temperature. There is a little thermometer built into the front door of the oven, though I've found it not to be super useful. It's only measuring the air temperature basically right behind the door, not deeper into the oven, not the pizza stone. When it comes to cooking Neapolitan-style pizza, air temperature is important, but not as important as stone temperature. All of those flames are going to cook the top of the pizza one way or the other. The tricky part is always the bottom of the crust. So I want to see how hot this pizza stone can get, and I really recommend using one of these infrared thermometers if you're going to use a pizza oven of any sort. After running this oven full blast for a while, the pizza stone reached as high as about 900 degrees Fahrenheit, which is absolutely hot enough. If I can get a stone to 750 or 800, I'm happy. I'll mention that while this stone was hitting 7, 8, and 900 degrees, the little thermometer in the front never really got any higher than about 500. The air inside of there was certainly hotter than that, but this built-in thermometer's reading does not accurately reflect that. Anyway, running the oven full blast with a full hopper of pellets got me around 30 or so minutes of flame. That's not very long, but it does need to burn those pellets pretty hard to make that flame. And the oven does stay super hot for well past that 30 minutes, but I only got that active flame inside of there for about half an hour. But that is plenty of time to bring the oven up to temperature and cook a few pizzas. And of course, you can always add more pellets into the hopper while it's burning to keep the flame going for as long as you need. Okay, we've gotten through the setup and burn in, so how about we make an actual pizza and test it out for real? I want to give this oven the best possible chance to wow me, so I'm making some 48-hour cold fermented Neapolitan-style pizza dough. It's actually a pretty easy dough to make, but you gotta let it sit in the fridge for like 2 days. But this is what the legit pizzerias do, and it's worth it if you want an exceptional pizza. So what I'm doing here is combining 500 grams of double O flour, 2¼ grams of active dry yeast, and 12 grams of salt. And while mixing on low speed, I'll gradually add in 300 grams of water that's warmed to 100 degrees. I'll let it mix just long enough for all the ingredients to be incorporated together, and then stop to let it rest. I'll cover the bowl with a damp towel and let it just sit at room temperature for 20 minutes. Then I'll resume mixing with the dough hook for 5 minutes at medium-low speed. If kneading by hand, you'll want to go about 10 minutes. Then I'll transfer the dough to a floured surface, and I will still give it about a minute of kneading by hand. I'm just doing the old stretch and fold. Then I'll form the dough into a nice ball and drop it into a lightly greased bowl. Cover it tightly with plastic wrap and let it rise right here at room temperature for 2 hours. After 2 hours, it's risen quite a bit, and back onto the board it goes. At this point, the board doesn't really need to be floured. Anyway, I'll divide this dough up into 3 equal balls, which will be the perfect sizes for 3 separate pizzas. I'll tightly tuck and roll each one to make a nice ball shape, and then they're going into a lightly greased container. You can pretty much use any kind of container for this, as long as it's big enough. I'll tightly cover this hotel pan in plastic wrap, and then the whole thing is going into the fridge for, you guessed it, 48 hours. 2 days later, and it's finally pizza time. I'll mention that I pulled this tray out of the fridge and let it sit at room temp for 3 hours. Anyway, I'll get one of those cold fermented dough balls out and start forming it into a disc on a well-floured board. And when I've stretched that disc out about as much as it will stretch without shrinking back up, I'll just let it rest for a few minutes. Then I can stretch and pull it some more, and then give it another few minutes to rest. If the dough feels like it's fighting you, just walk away for 5 to 8 minutes to let it relax. I'm not particularly talented at stretching pizza dough, and I certainly don't end up with something that is perfectly round. But this right here is close enough to my liking. I'm going to build my pizza with the dough already moved onto the pizza peel, so I don't have to try to move it there once I've loaded it with toppings. But first, I'll generously sprinkle some dry semolina all over that pizza peel so the dough won't stick and will glide right off when it's time to load into the oven. Okay, let's build a pizza. First, a thin layer of some nice sauce. Don't go heavy on the sauce, or your cheese and toppings will just slough right off of there. Next, some fresh mozzarella, some pepperoni, and just because it sounds delicious, how about some caramelized onion? Maybe a few basil leaves just to make it look extra pretty, and that's it. I've already got the oven heated up at this point, but let's go back in time a few minutes and start from that point. First, I need to empty the ashes out of this firebox from the cook I did a couple days ago. Nothing to it, just dump it out. Then I'll fill up the tray with some new pellets, get my fire starters in there, and light it up. Give it about 5 minutes, and then load up the hopper with more pellets. And once that stone is reading between about 700 and 750 degrees, in goes my pizza. This right here is the very first thing I've ever cooked in this oven, so we're about to find out together how well this bad boy works. Now, the directions say to keep the oven door closed when cooking, and I believe that's because the door needs to be on for the draft to work properly. That is, the airflow between the back air damper and the chimney, which allows those flames to be pulled across the ceiling of the oven. But with a Neapolitan-style pizza and pizza oven like this, you need to rotate that pizza like every 15 seconds because the whole thing only takes like 90 seconds to cook. So what I did was put the door in place and 15 seconds later, remove the door and rotate the pizza about a quarter turn. Then put the door back on, wait 15 more seconds, pull it off, rotate the pizza another quarter turn, and just repeat until the pizza is done. It sounds a lot more annoying than it actually is because, again, you're only standing there dealing with it for like a minute and a half. The pizza cooks insanely fast in an oven like this, and that's exactly what it's supposed to do. Once the bottom of the crust is looking good and the cheese on top is melty and wonderful, this pizza is done. So let's bring it back inside and see how we did. And I'd say that's looking pretty darn good. I think I could have stood for that crust to cook just a little bit longer, but my basil and pepperoni were starting to char on top, so I made an executive decision to pull it. This just tells me that I've got to experiment a little more with flame control via the damper adjustment on that oven. I need all the heat I can get on that stone, but not quite as much heat on top. Anyway, let's slice this thing up and have a taste. I gotta say, that's pretty nice. With a pizza like this, it all comes down to the crust. It seems like the simplest thing in the world, but a killer crust is what makes or breaks a Neapolitan-style pizza. And I'd say this crust is pretty killer. Great chew, great texture. On pizzas made in a regular home oven, the crust always comes out a bit bready, like chewing on something with the consistency of hard cornbread, rather than true pizza crust. But with a high-temp pizza oven like this, you can truly make the real deal crust. I did end up making a second pizza, and I loaded it up way heavier with cheese and toppings because that first pizza seemed just a little naked in that department. And I'm even happier with how my crust came out on this second pie. Tell me you wouldn't sink your teeth right into a slice of this pizza if you were standing here. Well, those pizzas came out great. And I expect they'll only get better with a little more practice using this oven. That being said, I know that there are some diehards out there who swear by cooking all manner of things in a pizza oven, other than just pizza. So I wanted to give that a try and cook a couple of other baked, roasted, or broiled dishes in this oven, just to see how it does and how it measures up to my regular indoor oven. Because after all, the beauty of a pellet-powered oven like this is that I could use it anywhere. Off-grid, out in the woods, camping, hunting, wherever. So let's start with another Italian recipe, classic baked ziti. It's kind of like a lasagna, but way quicker and easier. I'll get a pound of dry ziti pasta cooking in some salted boiling water. In the meantime, I'll brown a pound of sweet Italian sausage and mix that into a quart of some nice red sauce. For our simple ricotta mixture, I'll combine 15 ounces of ricotta cheese, 1 egg, some minced garlic, a big pinch of salt, pepper, and oregano, 1 medium-sized yellow onion chopped, and a cup of red sauce that doesn't have any sausage in it. Get that all thoroughly whisked together, and when our ziti is cooked al dente, I'll strain it and transfer it all into that ricotta mixture. Gently fold it all together so that it's all evenly distributed and incorporated, and now we're ready to build our layers. Because I'm using a screaming hot pizza oven to bake this, I'm not going to use glass or ceramic. It would probably be fine, but just to be safe, I'll use my cast iron casserole dish. First, a thin layer of that sausage mixture. Then I'll spoon in 1/2 of the noodle ricotta mixture and spread it all out. Next, half of my remaining sauce, just a nice even layer. Then sprinkle on about 6 ounces of shredded mozzarella or any type of Italian blend shredded cheese. Now just repeat with the rest of the noodle mix, the rest of the sauce, another 6 ounces of shredded cheese, and finally some fresh grated Parmesan all over top. Now I'll cover the whole thing with some aluminum foil and we're ready to bake. For something like this, I don't need full blast fire and flame. All the ingredients in it are fully cooked, and all I'm trying to do is heat this dish through and melt all that cheese. So I've got the oven heated up to around 400 degrees with the back damper mostly closed and the pellet hopper mostly empty. That is, I added some pellets initially to get the oven heated up, but I don't need to sustain that full flame for the duration of my cook. Then in goes the ziti. I quickly realized that my casserole pan is a little too long to slide straight in and the oven door won't close, but I found if I move the pan so it's more diagonal, it fits in there just fine. This would surely be impossible with the 12-inch version, but this 16-inch oven is working out just fine. So after cooking for about 15 minutes, my cheese is looking pretty melty, but at this point I'd love for that top layer to look amazingly golden brown and bubbly. So I'm pulling off that foil and giving it another couple minutes in the oven. After which, this baked ziti is coming out and I'll garnish with some minced up basil. And I can definitely see that the top didn't broil super evenly, as made evident by the darker areas of cheese, above which there was the greatest concentration of fire inside the oven. But hey, I'm still calling this a success because there's not any part of that baked ziti that doesn't look perfectly enticing to me. Anyway, let's get us a slice and see how it came out. It sure looks delicious. Let's see how it tastes. And of course it tastes delicious. How could it not? I will say that I think it would have been a little better if that oven could run a little less hot. Everything was hot and melty and tasty, but a dish like this may just need a little more time at a lower temperature. I will say that I love the broiling effect that this pizza oven has on cheese, and that is something I can't always get in my regular kitchen oven. Alright, since high broiler style heat and flames are the name of the game with this oven, I figured for our last test cook, we would do something that basically demands a high temp broiler. And that's some crispy roasted rosemary garlic potatoes, a side dish that everyone loves and goes with practically any main course. The first thing I'll do is get a bunch of peeled garlic cloves into a little saucepan along with enough olive oil to cover them about halfway. Because these potatoes have a sort of confit garlic element to them that makes them absolutely explode with flavor. I'll get this pan over low heat and just let those cloves cook away in that olive oil for about half an hour until they're completely softened and amazing. Next, I need to get my potatoes ready. I'm using skin-on Yukon Golds, and I just need to cut them up into some evenly sized chunks, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 to 1.5 inch pieces. And as I go, I'll drop the potato pieces into a pot of cold water. I'll add a big pinch of salt to this pot and get it boiling over high heat and just let it boil away until those potatoes are fork tender, at which time I'll strain them and transfer them into this hotel pan and just let them steam for a few minutes so the excess water evaporates off of them. Now to spoon out all those confit garlic cloves and just mash them up a bit with a spoon. Back to the potatoes, we're adding in a big pinch of salt, a big pinch of pepper, and a big pinch of fresh minced rosemary. Followed by all of that mashed up garlic, just spoon it around over top of the potatoes. Now I'll drizzle on some of that garlic infused olive oil. Just eyeball it until you've got enough that every potato chunk will be lightly coated in oil. Now get it all gently but thoroughly mixed together to get those potatoes nicely coated in everything. Then I'll transfer those potatoes to my deep cast iron skillet, and these potatoes are ready to roast. So the big horn is fired up once more, and in goes the skillet. I've got the heat and flame going pretty much full blast, and about every minute or so, I'll check on them and rotate the pan a bit, just trying to get even heat all over everything. After 5 minutes, I'll pull the skillet out and give the potatoes a gentle stir, just to flip them around so everyone has the opportunity to get some attention from that heat. And after a total of about 10 minutes, these potatoes are done and looking beautiful. I'll garnish with some fresh chopped parsley, and that's it. Perfectly delicious, tender on the inside, lightly crispy on the outside, amazing rosemary and garlic flavor. What's not to like? So there you have it. 3 very different kinds of cooks, all in the Big Horn pellet oven. Now that I've used this thing a few times, over a few days, I've got a pretty good handle on what I love about it and what I don't necessarily love about it. Let's start with the things I like. Number 1. This oven is pretty easy to use, all things considered. I've never even saw a pellet pizza oven before, and the first pizzas I ever cooked with it came out incredible. Get the pellets lit up, wait for the pizza stone to get super hot, and throw in your pizza. Just make sure not to take your attention away from it, because it cooks super fast. Number 2, the oven comes up to temperature pretty quickly. After lighting the pellets, I'd say it's about 15 minutes until it's ready to rock. Number 3, the oven feels very heavy duty and built to high quality standards, particularly at this price point. This is one of the most affordable pizza ovens of this style on the market, and it's built incredibly well. It's a lot heavier and sturdier than I expected it would be, and there's nothing flimsy or cheap about it. Number 4, There is plenty of room in there for doing everything from turning pizzas to fitting full-size pans, though this is definitely more so the case with this larger 16-inch version as opposed to the 12-inch version that they also sell. I will say that for the modest price difference between the two, I'd definitely go for the larger version. Number 5. This oven works very well for its intended purpose, which is pizzas, but it also works quite well for unintended purposes, such as baking pasta and broiling potatoes. I'm sure it would work great for steaks or other meats, and I'll almost certainly try that out at some point. Number 6. Assembly couldn't have been much easier. You'll need a Phillips screwdriver, but there's only 6 screws that will need your attention. Number 7, last but not least, the price. At the time of making this video, the 16-inch pellet pizza oven costs about $220, and the 12-inch version is about $150. Though if you use the link that I'm going to provide in the video description below, it's probably going to be quite a bit cheaper than that. Anyway, to compare with other brands, that's way cheaper than all of the Ghazni pizza ovens out there, and it's substantially cheaper than comparable Uni pizza ovens. After having used this oven, I can't imagine buying a $2,000 or $3,000 Ghazni because there's simply no way that a Ghazni will cook a pizza $2,000 or $3,000 worth better than this Bighorn. Now here's what I don't exactly love about this pellet oven. Number 1, the front hatch is just slightly clunky to get on and off, but I don't really know how I would design it better, and maybe there isn't really a great way. In any case, it took me a few times of using it to get the feel for latching the door in place without fumbling with it a bit. Number 2, this little handle that you use to remove the firebox is also kind of annoying. It doesn't stay in place unless you're holding it there, which isn't really a huge problem, and I guess I understand why they didn't want some big handle permanently protruding out of the back, but still, I guess I don't love it. Number 3, the included pellet scoop is pretty silly. It works, but it's just a small, odd little half cup that makes it easy to spill pellets all over the place. I'm sure I'll just use something else to scoop these pellets in the future. Number 4. Honestly, the first 3 dislikes are pretty trivial, but if I had to name one legit thing that I don't like about this oven, it's cleaning it. And I know this is an aspect of any pellet-fired pizza oven and not specific to the Bighorn, but all those burning pellets create a lot of soot, and that soot collects on all of the inside walls and ceiling of the oven. You don't need to clean it after every use, but after every few uses would be advised because eventually all of that soot building up will become an issue. The recommended way of cleaning that soot is to just wipe it off with dry paper towels, which isn't too difficult, but it does require me to shove my entire arm into this thing so I can reach all the way back there. And yes, that means I end up with soot all over my arm, and I'm not super excited about that. As for some general pros and cons of a pellet-fueled oven versus, say, propane ovens, I would say that the pros are no electricity or gas needed. You need pellets, but they're widely available and can be stored indefinitely. And it's super easy to transport and use anywhere. Cons of a pellet burning oven are that you have to deal with soot and ash, and that it burns through pellets sorta quick. For a cook longer than, say, 30 minutes, you'll definitely need to add more pellets to the hopper. Finally, here are just some other observations that don't necessarily fit into likes or dislikes. Number 1, this oven burns wood pellets and accordingly smells smoky because there's smoke coming from it. But it doesn't make the food taste smoky. It burns pellets, but it works nothing like a pellet smoker. The smoke pretty much goes straight out of the top of the oven and doesn't much interact with the food. Not to mention that a pizza cooking for 90 seconds doesn't have any chance to absorb any smokiness in the first place. 2, this oven gets insanely hot on the inside and will obviously become incredibly hot on the outside as well. You don't want to touch any part of the exterior with your bare hands. But to my pleasant surprise, that heat doesn't radiate very much straight down. That is to say, the table beneath this oven is certainly warm, but it's nowhere near too hot for me to keep my hand there. I only mention this to point out that I don't need to worry about this thing burning or scorching my wooden table just by sitting on it. I'm not sure about a plastic table, but this wood table is just fine. So I guess that's about it. All in all, I'm extremely impressed with this Bighorn pellet pizza oven. I didn't really have any expectations going into it because, well, I've never used a pellet oven before. But I really like it. I've used it to make some outstanding food, and I fully expect this oven to become part of my regular outdoor cooking repertoire. I think that for a lot of people, the propane-powered Bighorn might be more ideal for them because it's probably just a little bit easier to use and clean. But if you like the idea of a super portable and essentially wood-fired pizza oven, this is a great option. Anyway, if you'd like to get one of these Bighorn pizza ovens for yourself, be sure to use the link and coupon code that I put in the video description below. I'm not quite sure when it expires, but right now you can get a pretty nice discount. In the meantime, be sure to like and subscribe and stay up to date with all of our latest stuff, including future food, cooking, and product review videos. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'm John, and this is Great Lakes Country.